Thanks to everyone for making it. So I think we want to have a pretty free-flow conversation. We'll have some Q&A time at the end. But we've got a couple of questions prepared. I think we can start out with a round of intros.
Yeah. Hi, I'm John Peterson with Jam City, based in Culver City, California. And we started in 2010, kind of grew from a super small company. Now we're over 700 employees, 8 offices.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
We acquired where are you up to now? Where you go?
3 companies last year. And yeah, looking for great opportunities here. And if you guys see our coffee cups, that's us. So not saying the coffee's going to be good, but the cups rock.
Woohoo. Free product placement here. All right, my name is David Bluhm. I come from Seattle. I was born in Seattle, so that makes me kind of unique around here, I guess. But also came from game production, game studio, several of them, starting in 1999, and most recently with Wargaming, a company called WG Sales here locally. Before that, a company called Z2, which was acquired by King. So have a little bit of a background in building and prosecuting and publishing games, but working now in the investment banking area, helping studios find good, solid, strategic, and financial exits. And I work with a partner in London named Shum Singh. So we both have a kind of an extensive background in working with game companies.
Sounds good. My name is Gockley. I work with a company called FunPlus. For those of you that don't know, we're actually a pretty interesting company that was started down in California, but that has the majority of our development team over in Beijing. But we build games for the West, so we're kind of a very hybrid institution. I'm actually representing the investments and acquisitions side of the company. While we make mobile games, we actually have a lot of investments in other game studios, esports teams, and a couple of investments in digital media as well. I got started in games doing consulting for companies down in San Francisco, and I spent a lot of time up here with Microsoft and some large gaming deals as well. And yeah, excited to talk about consolidations and acquisition stuff.
All right, perfect. My name is Jim Ying. I'm with CVCapital. We're also a Shanghai. We're an investment bank based in Shanghai. We work on later stage investment and M&A deals. The transactions that you guys might be familiar with, we did a raise for Behavior Interactive, and then we also worked on the AppLovin transactions. But let's jump into the Q&A. So appreciate the intros. Can you tell the audience a little bit about what your company is looking for and why that is? So what are the market trends that are driving that prioritization of targets?
Yeah, so our company is looking for anything that can make us bigger. We're really good at puzzle, and we have that down pretty well. So if we can take a company that's working with puzzle that might not have the KPIs that it needs, we can help them out with that, and getting deep into level tuning and whatnot if we have to. But it's something that adds to our core, which is the puzzle. Our Cookie Jam's our number one game, and Panda Pop, bubble shooting. So we're really, really good at that. We have close to 40 million MAU. But then also we need to diversify. So we're looking for other great opportunities, something that we can't do ourselves. So we acquired 3 years ago, TinyCo, because they were doing builder games, and we don't want to do that ourselves. And so we look for great opportunities like that. And then they also had the Harry Potter IP, which was great for us. So diversification for us is key. We acquired Bingo Pop from Yukon last year. We acquired Disney Emoji Blitz last year. We acquired a studio called Brains out of Colombia. And all of these studios were doing things that we couldn't do, but it added to the portfolio of our company for diversification. And we grow a lot through acquisitions, but it's super strategic on how we look at things.
Let me jump into a quick follow-up question. So in terms of diversification, it sounds like it is some story-based games, match 3, but why not into mid-core or focus on geography in terms of diversification?
Yeah, so mid-core is something that we will certainly look at. I mean, we've looked at, mid-core puzzle, if you will, the Small Giant. We looked at them, very early on. We have a game from Brains out of Colombia that's more of a Clash Royale type of a game. It's super funny. It's got great humor. So yeah, we would certainly look at that. But and this is why I always talk to, my buddy David and other Agnitio capitals around the world. It's a small ecosystem, and there's always just incredible companies out there, and it's just a function of, will they fit? Does the culture fit? You asked one other question regarding diversification as far as geography. We just acquired 231 Play, a studio out of Berlin, and they're doing Mahjong and about ready to come out with a solitaire game too. So that's something that adds super, super well to our core player group. Those games are fantastic for cross promo.
Dave?
All right, so we work with John and Graham and Rob, and the companies that are trying to expand their business, and what we look for is business builders ourselves, entrepreneurs that have a passion for building a business. And my partner and I are a 2-person company. We're not looking to scale or become bigger. We enjoy working with small, independent studios, entrepreneurs. And I describe my role most accurately as life coach, as really sitting down and figuring out what they want from their business, what their management team wants, how they want to prosecute the rest of their lives and put their talents and professional skills to work, and find that match and find the right kind of a fit going forward for them, whether it's keep building their company and just help them move that along, or whether it's find an acquisition partner that can scale them faster. And so that's actually most of the work, is figuring out what you really want and how you want to structure it. And then we go out and try and find which company out there makes a best and most positive fit.
For FunPlus, the outcomes that we're looking for are just large commercial success. I think the team, we're a private company, and the founding team has been lucky enough to build 2 kind of billion-dollar businesses back to back. Basically, they built a casual game studio in California and then moved to Beijing, and then they sold that to a large Chinese game company for $1 billion back in 2016, and now they're running the Kings Group, which is a large kind of strategy game studio that has 2 of the top 50 grossing games in the strategy genre on mobile that are doing very well, and those are at a run rate of about $1 billion. They're really looking for teams that can kind of drive those really large commercial successes. That's mostly around mobile. We just think that's a very kind of easy market, and there are a lot of geographies that themselves can drive $1 million outcomes: North America, Europe, Korea by itself, China by itself, Japan by itself. But then we also look at things outside of mobile gaming. So we also are investors in esports. We just think that's going to be an emerging market that's going to be very successful once it scales and once we figure out how to monetize that audience. And then just other parts of digital media. So there's streaming and game streaming and live streaming and other kind of ways to build an audience around digital entertainment that could be very successful.
All right, thanks. So for developers that either are in these areas that you guys are looking for, or maybe for other folks that would like to get on your radar, how do developers or companies that are looking for strategic partners, either investment or acquisition, how do they get on your radar?
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Conferences like this are just a great way to meet people. I think overall building your network as soon as possible and starting to think about that, even if you're not directly out looking to fundraise or looking to sell the company, meeting people like David or Shum as early as possible is just great. And those income investments will build dividends over time once you know somebody, and then a couple of years down the road when you are contemplating a transaction or some other type of transformative transformative event for your company or your team, then you're already kind of well plugged into the overall environment. So I would just encourage you to talk to as many people as possible and network as much as possible.
I mean, it's our job to find you. We're supposed to be knowledgeable of what's going on. We ask a lot of questions. We look at a lot of metrics and screens, and if we're doing what we're doing, we're knocking on your door and asking, what you want to do with your company and how we might be able to help. So we're certainly visible at most of these events and conferences. We host client dinners to get you kind of comfortable with the major publishers and strategic investors out there, and help you through the entire process, including getting you ready. So our job is to find you. The more visible you can make yourselves, I guess, the easier it is on us. But it's kind of our responsibility to find you.
Yeah, and I agree with both you guys. Industry events are super key. It's a small group of companies that are here, and we always go to the Gamescoms of the world, the GDCs of the world, but these small ones, these intimate ones are really important if you want to get in touch with us and talk to us, because we have a lot of time. GDC's crazy, so that's more difficult. But I'd say if you have something, LinkedIn's easy. I mean, we all look at LinkedIn, and if you don't, you should. But I get pinged on LinkedIn quite a bit, and there's amazing opportunities that come from that, and that starts the process. So just being at the events, LinkedIn, and just knowing who the key players are and get known.
All right, thanks. So in terms of timing for the companies, what's a good time to start reaching out and start having these conversations?
Yeah, I would say for us, in order to gain our interest, at least have something that is in soft launch or about ready to go to soft launch, so we can have some KPIs to look at. I mean, if the game plays great and we can get a build, perfect. But then we want to keep the momentum going. So if you're 6 months from a soft launch or getting some KPIs that are really meaningful, it's probably a little bit too early. Good to get on our radar. But if you want to get the momentum going, it's just hit us when we're ready, because we get pinged by 1,000 plus companies a year, honestly. And it's important to have something that's tangible. If you have KPIs, is monetization going to kick in? If monetization's not going to kick in for another 3 months, then we got to wait. And so it's just be ready and know your KPIs when you're coming out, what your gameplay is, and what you need to aspire to. And if you have D30 that's supposed to be 15% and you're at 1, or it's, depending on a different type of game, it's supposed to be 6% and you're at 1, you need to work on it. And so you just need to know your game, know your KPIs, know when to talk to us.
This is one of those areas where there's a lot of great advice and counsel, and it's not usable. A lot of people find themselves looking for either money or exits at the worst possible times because they got their businesses into a bit of a pickle or a challenge. You've often probably all heard the notion you want to raise money when you don't need it. Well, that's the last thing from your mind when you don't need it. So you do have to get a little ahead in terms of planning your business. And I come from tech beyond gaming, and the notion is you're always raising money. You're always spending a certain portion of your time making sure your company has the right partners, the right financial supporters to grow your business. Not knowing exactly when you might need to use them, but it's an important part of the job of any company leader. in terms of vision and capital and talent, that's the job of a company leader. So that capital has to take up a certain percentage of your time. Whether you need it or not, you don't know sometimes when you're going to need it or when a growth opportunity is going to cause your needs to change. So you just need to have relationships with people that can help you, that are good fits and synergistic with your business. So the answer of timing, if it's raising money, you should be apportioning a certain amount of your time always to making those relationships and helping them understand your business. And when they need to help it, you sometimes don't exactly control that timing. We've all had games that didn't meet our expectations. And that's the wrong time to have to go and raise capital after you're going to John or Graham with your metrics and they didn't meet your expectations. In terms of exit, again, back to the life coach comment, that's you and your management team, the senior people, your co-founders, your friends and family that probably helped fund the company, all have to have a consensus on what needs to happen with the company and whether it's got the right resources to grow on its own or it could benefit from being within a large organization with more global or bigger machinery to grow the company faster. And so that's a constant evaluation you need to go through with your team and yourself to decide when it's time to seek a partner to grow the company faster or bigger.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd have to add is the process does take between 3 to 6 months. That's what you should be preparing for. But if you're doing it well, it can take as little as 2 to 3 weeks. Kind of to give a counter.
Somebody have a recorder on that.
to give a counter optimistic example, if you're a studio that talks to John or myself, you've been talking to us for a while. The game's not out yet. The game's only in soft launch. Let's say you get that great first cohort and the game looks exceptional. You've already had that conversation with us. We already have a good background on the team and the management that's behind it. And if you're beating your KPIs, you're doubling the monetization goals, all that stuff, then that conversation has basically already started. So you've kind of shortcutted that whole 3-month cycle. Now you know who you want to be talking to. You already have the partners lined up, and you can kind of start talking terms as soon as possible. Whereas kind of going out and talking to as many people as possible, that's the process that could take 2 to 4 months. If you have all that kind of homework already done, and then you are in a position to either sell or look for investment, then you're already there.
Yeah, let me add to that. It is a conversation between the seller or the company looking to raise and the buyer investor. And the entrepreneurs out there building the companies, they can build a great product, they can drive their revenue, but just as important is for the investor or buyers out there like John and Graham, what is it that they're looking for and understanding the ups and downs of the buyer market and who you need to be talking to at any given time. All right, so then can you talk through, for the transactions that you guys have done, what were the 1 or 2 things that caught your eye for these teams? And we'll get to some of the surprises later on, but what were the things that initially caught your eye where you thought, hey, this is a team that we should dig into?
Yeah, for us, I think it's super exciting when you talk to companies or teams that are so focused and so excited about their one game. They might have multiple games that they've done, but now they're just like hyper-focused. They're going to put these other ones on the side for now and just focus on this one game. If we get super excited about that game, we want them to be really excited about that game. So I think, especially with how expensive CPIs are now and UA, and if they have 4 different titles going and they have one great one, but they want to make sure all these other ones stay, it's just like, that's going to be, how are they going to get the funding to keep all those going if we don't step in? So if they have one game that's absolutely knocking it out of the park and say soft launch, that's where it would be really exciting for us to get involved. And that's what we've done. Our last couple ones are like, nope, we just want to do this, the 2-3-1 play out of Berlin. They're a team of 8, super hyper-focused on Mahjong and Solitaire, and that's all they want to do. They're very successful in their past businesses, past games that they've developed, but that's all they want to do and just be super, super tight and good at that one in that one vertical, if you will. And so that's what's really, gets us excited immediately. And if obviously the KPIs show and they're hitting their numbers, it's pretty easy for us to say yes.
Yeah, I think specialization, definitely in terms of the competitive market of gaming right now, is something that you should be focused on. I think what John's trying to say is like the best bingo game or the best Mahjong game out there is probably going to be built by somebody who's been building Mahjong and bingo games for the last 10 years. That's just part of the way the market's going and the way that the audience is really understanding the quality of those games. I think the only other 2 points I'd add to that is experience. So again, if you are somebody that has been building Mahjong games for the last 10 years, you probably shouldn't go try to build a 4X battle game just right off the bat. And then the last one I would have is just understanding where your innovation is. I think I'm seeing a lot of decks that are trying to kind of point towards different market trends and trying to kind of hop on them without understanding what really the customer motivations are behind different innovations in the market. So if you look at successful titles like Small Giant that have kind of come to market and you just think that it's a mashup of a puzzle and an RPG, it's a little bit more complicated than that. So kind of better understand what the innovation that team has driven and what you are planning to drive in that market, as opposed to just kind of following the trends. Kind of really deeply study the market and understand what you want to do and how the customer is going to react to it.
I will add that this industry has matured, and it's no longer as attentive to component acquisitions where they're just buying, ability to build a strong core game loop or a particular high efficiency live ops team. We have buyers that will buy based on pure metrics, financial metrics. So they want adult leadership. If they have a studio that they feel is well led by mature management and it consistently produces profit, they're not as concerned about how profitable it is as they are as how stable it is. Because the history of the game business is that a lot of one-shot wonders and people that built a great game then had trouble expanding into multiple games or multiple platforms or prosecuting their business globally, what have you. Teams that can build those and manage them efficiently have buyers out there because they are building on financial metrics and they're making offers to buy companies strictly based on kind of programmatic financial multiples. And they value stability more so than some single competency that they might be weak on.
Okay. So for these deals that have happened, people see the coverage in the news, and it's very exciting for those founders and those employees. But I think what they don't see is all the transactions and all the conversations out there that happen in the background where an end result doesn't happen. Can you guys talk to some of the deals that you guys have seen or have moved further along in, and what is it that might have derailed those discussions?
Well, we built an app, and you just swipe right to accept the deal, and then it appears on your... Oh, forget it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is transparency in your partners. So I'll be ready to have kind of the mature conversations about how the business is going as soon as possible in the process. If you're managing a more complicated mid-core game economy and you can see its weaknesses, don't assume that the diligence is going to miss it and get to the end and get in a process where the game economy is faltering mid-acquisition. That's just not a place where anybody wants to be. The same thing could be said about your tech weaknesses. If you've built a tech stack and you're realizing that there are some things that aren't doing well as far as your technical debt, just be open and transparent about all that as soon as possible. And I'm obviously saying this from the buyer perspective, but the more trust you gain in that process by being transparent, the more kind of respect will be given back to you, and more likely the higher the economic outcome for everybody involved.
And so Okay, so on the flip side, from the developer's standpoint, or the acquiree standpoint, what are some things that they should look out for in the conversations with the investors or the buyers in terms of their prioritization of who they want to go with?
There's an 80% subject matter here, I think, and that's the intentions of the leaders of the company and whether they are going to fully commit themselves to a deal. I mean, this is the age-old challenge that acquirers have as they buy teams. Games, plans to launch games, plans to live up games, strategies, they're all replaceable, and they're all created by teams, and teams are the ones that execute on those plans. So if an acquirer is buying a team, they want to know they've bought not just the back, but the heart of the team. They want to know that that team is committed to the new goal. And of course, studios are famously probably more independent than a lot of other businesses, and they have breathed a certain amount of culture and preference on the types of games and how they prosecute them and how they communicate. I think acquirers have become hypersensitive to this, and they are now very amenable to keeping cultures intact and letting teams drive their businesses the way they see fit. And that's been a very positive change over the last few years. After seeing a lot of acquirers kill studios and kill their energy and kill their mojo. So I think there's a win-win here, but they want to know that the entrepreneur, the senior teams, the people driving that business are going to be fully on board. And they're willing to make the compromises to keep that culture intact, but they need to know that there's a win-win there and there's a mutual commitment going forward. Because after all, that's where the basis of their investment ultimately is made.
Yeah, I think for us, what David said was, he hit it right on the head, is culture for us is so important. We want to find teams that are so hungry, so passionate, and they have the leaders. They're going to take them there for the next 3 to 4 years. So when we look at opportunities, finding teams that are that hungry and that excited and that passionate about what they're doing is fantastic. But the big thing for us is don't mess that up. And we don't want to, and we won't. And if we do, then we're screwing up as a team, I think. And that comes from the leaders in our company, mainly the two founders. Chris DeWolf, coming from MySpace, he had when News Corp bought MySpace, all they wanted was revenue. And MySpace at the time was way above Facebook. Way more many users, and when you want revenue, that just absolutely changes the culture of the company. It's always like, where's the money coming? Where's the money coming from? Well, we got to put more ads in, more ads, and it just, you can see where it ended up, and the cleanliness of Facebook versus MySpace, and how that acquisition through a company that didn't appreciate culture and where they were going and only wanted one thing. We've learned a lot from that, and I think when you look at opportunities that are out there, it's just, for us, culture starts number one, and you want to make sure that the founders are going to be there. The founders just don't want their money and they're going to run within the first year. That's a red flag for us. So, basically what David said, we're really, really key on finding teams that want to stay and don't want to be interfered with by the major company coming in.
Okay. Let's talk about the process a little bit. So I think Graham had mentioned down there, was it 2 to 4 months, 3 to 6 months, you had said? Can you talk a little bit about how long does this process take? What are some of the steps that happen along the way for you guys?
Yeah, let's split it into two, and let's start with acquisition. I think the first thing you should do, unless you're fully experienced and might have sold a company yourself before, is contact kind of professional help, either agents or bankers that have experience, like David over here, to help that process. They just know the network of buyers out there very well. They know how to package the company, and they know how to kind of professionalize aspects of the pitch that you might not be experienced in. So that's what I would most advocate if you want to go down that path, is look for people that can help either in a very professional capacity or in a more informal capacity. Just talk to other founders who have sold their companies about what they've done in the process and ask for their guidance and help. And then kind of going down the full diligence process, just get ready for multiple stages of questions with teams, and have your financials ready, have your kind of data and stats around the game in good working condition to be kind of audited and be ready to answer questions about all of that. And then as far as sitting down and negotiating terms, just be very clear about what you want at the beginning of the process. Are you looking to, again, join a company and try to build something with them over the next 2, 4, 6 years in more of a long-term relationship, or you can be more honest and you're really just looking for a quicker exit. You definitely want to structure the deal terms that kind of mirror your own incentives and how you're feeling about both the partner and the economic outcome that you want. So that overall kind of process takes multiple stages, but that's what I would suggest for an acquisition. For an investment, kind of very similar. You're just going and looking out for partners that want to be a part of your vision and the company going forward. Kind of better understand what partners could bring to the table in terms of strategic synergies or strategic support on terms of publishing or monetization and things like that, and then go out and seek partners that have invested and brought those strengths to the table in other deals. That's what I would recommend.
So most studios just aren't ready. But that's good. That's okay, because that's our job to help you get ready. So we come in and review and assess where you're at with your financials, with your metrics, with your roadmap, and we help you with timing. But coming from operating studios, we can pull out things that are strategically valuable, things you're doing well, help emphasize those. But we'll literally just help you prepare and prepare external-facing material. We'll give you absolute guidance on what has to be in a due diligence file, and we'll literally organize everything you need to do and help you do it. And we're very hands-on. We're not a organization. We're not trying to scale. It's Shum and I do every bit of our work. We represent you at every meeting. So we're very hands-on, and we like doing that. And it's part of our, I guess, bedside manner. But we will walk you through that process, and sometimes you're just not ready to go out. And it'll take months to prepare that. We have several clients right now that are just getting prepared to start talking to people, getting their financials in order, getting their metrics in order, getting all their documentation in order. So that's a big part of our work that we do to get you ready to go out. So we'll help you whether you're ready or not, and do kind of a gap analysis and address it.
Yeah, I think having the Davids of the world, make our jobs a lot easier. But honestly, we talk to companies if they don't have a clue on how the process has started and all that. It doesn't matter, as long as they have the passion and a great game. It's a good start, and so it can go from, could be a 6-month, could be a year process, could be 16, 18 months. But you start early, and just we help them along the way, and then the Davids will come in, or maybe not, and in either way it's fine. So I wouldn't stress out about the timing. The timing, it all depends on where you're at.
All right. So there have been a couple of big recent announcements and developments in terms of Apple's gaming initiative, Google Stadia, Epic's pushing on their game store to compete with Steam. How have you guys seen, and what kind of expectations do you guys have around how these initiatives will impact either the investment or the M&A ecosystem moving forward?
I'll start from the investing side, just because we're starting to feel it a little bit more in terms of the teams we're talking to. It's great, I think, for the people in this room and for the gaming community overall. There's a lot of teams that are willing to put a lot of capital into great, talented game studios. That's a bonus for everybody in the room. As far as more people seeking returns on gaming investments, I think it's becoming a little more competitive. If you're talking to a team and you want to be in their cap table for the foreseeable future, and Epic's just going to come in and give them a $10 million platform deal instead. Therefore, we're not going to be able to compete on those same terms. They obviously have unfair distribution advantages as well. So it's a little bit different from our perspective, but for the overall ecosystem, I think it's a large plus. I would say just be understanding of how these trends are happening. Google, Apple, Epic, and I think Steam and Xbox, they're all going to have their own initiatives out there. Sony, make sure I don't miss any. They're going to have their own initiatives out there. Just be cognizant of kind of which markets you want to play in and how you're going to do it. I think all those teams are really qualified. They are just very competitive, and you want to make sure you're not kind of limiting your opportunity set either based upon time or the number of platforms that you want to build on.
So been through this many, many times and made the right and wrong decisions about adopting and embracing new platforms. I can remember doubting Verizon was going to ship anything with Brew on it any reasonable time and walking away and having to go back on my knees and beg to get back in after the fact. And that was a long time ago, long before we had this iPhone or smartphone, I should say, ecosystem. So being early on a platform can really pay off, or it can be too early and distract you and siphon off valuable capital and opportunity costs. So these decisions have to be made carefully. But it is going to disrupt, and we're going to have new opportunities. And so I would tell you to stay agile, aware, and be able to react fast as you possibly can. And these will create new opportunities. I've always been some combination of a believer and hopeful in the subscription model. The idea that you can build such a great brand that people will say, look, I'll pay some fixed amount a month every month, and you're going to entertain me, in this case with bundles of games. And so I think that the free-to-play overhang of building a game is a massive endeavor. And it can really obviously get in the way of just making a fun experience. I would welcome the idea that we find a different way to monetize games than free-to-play for our communities that can now allow us to just focus on fun and engagement without figuring out how to emotionally get them to pay us more money. That would be a welcome thing if we had a subscription model that stabilized the ecosystem such that we can just focus on building fun games. I'm not sure that's how it's going to turn out or not. We'll have to see, but I would just be as agile as you possibly can, because I think there are some disruptions coming.
Just a quick add. I think any type of strategic money from the industry makes a lot of sense compared to just going out and getting any money you can take, because they get your business, they understand it, and it'll probably lead to other avenues of opportunity.
All right, so I think we've got around 4 or 5 minutes left. I want to leave some time for folks in the audience to ask any questions. Open it up. Want to shout it out and I'll read. Yeah, it's a small room.
Tell us about the multiples. Where are the multiples on EBITDA? How much money can we get?
Well, a lot of markets, the multiples have been declining, so buyers are under a little more scrutiny as to what they can do in terms of offering multiples to you right now. It's not serious, but it is, been a softening environment in most environments. Obviously, North America has been pretty flat to declining in terms of valuing game companies, but Europe, where it's been a lot healthier, has softened as well, most recently. We're still advising clients that the general area is 10 times EBITDA. And getting above that, you're talking about strategic values and finding things you do really well that has a great value to a potential acquirer. And then that again goes back to that fit, finding somebody who can take full advantage of what your competencies really are and can value it.
Yeah, so generally what we'll see is when folks talk about multiples, it's either a multiple of the top line revenue or the multiple of the EBITDA or net income. For some of the recent Western deals, you do see in the 10 times EBITDA range. From a net income perspective, you might see somewhere from 8 to 12, 8 to 14. On the top line revenue side, maybe you're looking at 2 to 4 times. Now, those are pretty big ranges, and what you'll typically ask is, how do I get to one side of the range versus the other? And I think that's where the strategic value comes into play. The strategic value, what is your forward-looking story? Generally, companies that are looking to acquire, they're excited about the team, they're excited about the track record, they're excited about the past historical financials, and there needs to be some forward-looking story, right? Most companies don't want to buy into a flat or declining business, and so assuming you have all of those pieces in place, that's when you can start pushing into the higher range of the EBITDA multiples.
Yeah, I would just say it depends on where you are in the life cycle. If you're a company that's basically just starting out, that's more, you're looking to seek investment, and that's more like an option on the future outcome of the company. So that's, again, more captured by venture capital models. If you're a more stable business that's been operating for a while, that's more in the multiple range. If you're somewhere in between those two, which is you have a game that's at scale, you also have a lot of tech that can be used for other games, that game engine that could be used for other types of kind of reskins, other things like that, that's where you can kind of get in the higher multiple range, but depends on where you are. Most frustrating answer is it depends, but it does.
It's definitely an interesting dance because these are extensive, deep conversations, and they always start out with the team and what are the upcoming products and the personalities. But ultimately, for both sides, it does come down to a lot of times the price, and you have to do that dance. You have to get the materials prep to do so. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the company and where it's at. Like Graham said, if they've been around for a long time and they're looking for an exit, and the games have been around and it's kind of on its downward trend, it's going to be super hard to get the 10x EBITDA multiple on that. But if there's a great story to tell and they have more in the pipeline and something super exciting, then you might even get a little bit more. But obviously stability is important for us when we're looking for opportunities, predictability. But we'd gladly pay more if the opportunity presented itself.
And John told me backstage he throws in a case of Yeti cups with the Jam City logo.
It's been a great panel. I'm going to have to big round of applause for Jim, John, and